but they were originally made for cooking, not as eating utensils. They came in handy when grabbing hot things out of pots. Of course, the musical version of chopsticks had to wait until somebody invented the piano. The Chinese use 45 billion chopsticks a year. Also, Chinese chopsticks are longer, thicker, and blunt at the end, compared to the thinner, pointy Japanese kind. You use thousands of nerves and over 50 muscles in your fingers, wrist, arm, and shoulders while using chopsticks. Wow, the chopsticks work out.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry to interrupt your meeting, sir. Your daughter has been admitted to the hospital. You are advised to go to the hospital, sir.
Okay, dismiss. Dismiss. Move on.
Siras, greetings. We're here in Russia. We all know that Russia culture has been famous for saying that if you don't spend time with your family, you don't consider yourself as a man. In this scenario, an officer has been called due to emergency because his daughter has been brought to hospital. This action is proof that the Russian has said as motto that family comes first and family is our first priority.
Lima na lang ako.
Basket.
Ay, mga tagiga na. Wala lang ako.
Lumakit.
Stop, ang ganun mo.
Baby, Darling. Ano yung klase nyo nun?
Darling.
Pwede na akong extra.
Konnichiwa.
Sarap.
Is the Philippines really a poor country? No, I don't believe it is a poor country, but you would have to be completely blind not to see the poverty, injustice, abuse of power, not to mention the enormous infrastructure issues typically facing all developing countries. And the fact that no one country in the world gets hit with as many large storms, called typhoons here, as this country does. It is important to understand the huge demographic disparity as well, whereby more than 1 in 3 person is younger than 14 years old and fewer than 4.5% are older than 65. Canada, for its part, has only 16.1% of its population aged 14 years and below, but a staggering 15.3% are over 65, and it's getting worse. The Philippines is poor in economy, but she is rich in natural resources: wood, vegetables, rice, waters. So what is the problem? Some says that the Philippines is a country where people values their cultures, and I completely agree with that. Studies showed that the Philippines has a combination of Spanish cultures, American, Chinese, Indian, Japanese, and other Southeast Asian countries. In short, it has been following others' footsteps, from good things up to the wrongdoings, not to mention a lot of them mixed into one. Filipinos are very fond of being lazy and gambling. Why, you ask? Because before, in the Spanish colonizados, the Spaniards came up to these tactics, taught them how to be lazy, to gamble and do nothing. To not think of the future, but to the present enjoyment only. It is to make the Filipinos ignorant and would not dare to fight them.
Nestled between embassies and gleaming high-rises in the centre of Bangkok, a community on the other side of the wealth gap. In the shadow of a new apartment complex, Juanisa lives with her 3 children. Today's a rare day off with the kids. Usually her 15-year-old son has to care for his siblings while she works. She says her income barely covers the family's costs or repayments of loans she's been forced to take.
I want to have a better life, but I can't. I just have to accept my fate because I was born in this condition, and I have to take what is available. I just spend my life day to day trying to get enough to eat and live, that's all.
It's a common complaint in this community. During the pandemic, many people lost jobs and incomes dropped. And now the cost of living is rising sharply. They're not getting any help.
We barely get any help from the government. We don't get anything. We only get help from foundations and charities when we reach out to them.
Thailand's often cited as a success story when it comes to reducing poverty, but the wealth here has not been evenly distributed. And in the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report of 2018, Thailand was listed as one of the most unequal places in the world. In the years since then, life has been even harder for lower income communities. With global economic trends going in the same direction, economists are concerned Thailand will be badly hit.
Thailand is a country that has wide inequality and wealth gap, and inflation would hit the most vulnerable harder.
By the side of a busy expressway, some of the most vulnerable are struggling to survive. This is a community for the deaf and hard of hearing, often cast out by their families. Fon takes us under the bridge where she, her husband and several other families had made homes from refuse and scrap. She explains their disability allowance of $20 a month barely lasts a few days. The strain is enormous. They try to salvage what they can from the waste others throw away, and with the roar of the traffic overhead, life goes on, while their complaints go unanswered. Tony Cheng, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
Subodh Bind earns around $3 a day. His job at the local spice market pays enough to keep him above India's poverty line of 55 cents daily.
I earn enough to deal with small problems. I can even borrow a little money from people. If someone in my family gets sick, then I'm in trouble. I'll have to sell the few items I have to survive.
Subodh and his family have lived here their whole lives. They earn items the Indian government says confirms that they're not poor. In fact, according to consulting firm McKinsey's new measure, Subodh's access to basic services like education for his children means he's above what it describes as the empowerment line.
Nearly 300 families live in this illegal slum. New as well as conventional measures of poverty identify some of them as empowered and others as poor. But on the ground, it's hard to see the difference.
Nirmala Devi is Subodh's neighbour. Their homes and lives are practically the same, but the government says Nirmala and her family live below the poverty line. This gives her access to cheap food and gas.
I've lived here my whole life and my children were born here. Maybe I will die here too. The government has given me a card that says I'm poor, but it has done nothing to make my life better.
Ironically, it's hard to prove that you're poor in India. These women want to apply for ration cards, government documentation that will give them access to subsidized food. National programs may feed millions of people, but observers say a strong economy can provide benefits for many more.
We would expect in future that 90% of the improvement in living standards will come either from income growth through jobs or from more effective delivery of services rather than spending more money on subsidies alone.
But for Nirmala, staying alive is a full-time job, justified by the government card that she holds. And for her neighbour, Subodh, staying above the poverty line is just as big a challenge, a delicate difference that hundreds of millions of Indians struggle with every day. Nidhi Dutt, Al Jazeera, New Delhi.